Okay, our picture's still not coming up. What the heck is going on? Hold up. There we go. All right. Live now.
I don't have it yet. Just a refresh, not up live.
Two viewers.
Oh, okay, see it on the home page now.
Okay.
Yeah, we're showing okay.
All right, perfect. We'll give everyone like 2 minutes to trickle in. Did you have a good Father's Day, RC?
I had a good and busy Father's Day on Sunday. Saturday was equally busy with the 28th anniversary celebration. And then Sunday was some fun with my son. Played disc golf for the first time in a million years. And surprisingly still had use of my right arm the next day. I thought I would be in danger of being put on the questionable list for work on Monday, but I responded pretty well. It's been a long time since I played frisbee golf before my neck and arm started having issues, so I went out and I was like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna whip this frisbee around and just like the old days. Nope.
Can everybody on this stream hear us? Is there any issues with the connection?
Well, let me
Wait for...
I can hear you.
You can... All right.
I hear you. Just check to see if I hear me.
Yeah, just getting some
Yep, I hear me.
warnings, so hopefully we're okay. Okay. I think we can start diving in, RC, if you wanted to talk about the first topic, the Steelers running backs and quarterbacks. So obviously the running back room is pretty similar to last year, right? Najee and Jalen Warren. They obviously have Cordell Patterson, but they also they overhauled their QB room, putting it lightly, got rid of Pickett and Rudolph, and now they have Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. RC, what are you hearing about the Steelers QB and running back rooms?
And they have your favorite coach, Arthur Smith.
Yep.
I had an interesting conversation with someone in the past week about the Steelers running back situation, in that they portrayed, and I think I even heard a Steelers insider talk about this on some show after I had this conversation, that the Najee Harris, you know that they turned down Najee Harris's fifth-year option because he was a first-round draft pick. So they declined his fifth-round option, which is kind of a diss to first-round players, but not unexpected for running backs, but still Najee's ticked. The GM is out in the last 24 hours saying, oh no, we still love him. We just think we're looking to do a deal with him. We just didn't want to be with the fifth-year option. We want to look at it outside of that. So a lot of words are going around about it, but I was talking to somebody who said that to watch the Najee Harris situation, to see what the outcome of a power struggle going on within the Steelers, and that Najee Harris is the rope in the tug of war of Tomlin's totally into Najee Harris, he wanted Arthur Smith to come in and make Najee Harris Derrick Henry 2.0 because he wants to prove his point with Najee. But his 5th-year option was turned down, and there's whispers that management is not interested in Najee Harris. They don't like what he's given them and the price it's going to take going forward. But Tomlin's all into it. So apparently Najee Harris is at the crossroads of a potential battle between management and coaching. And if they're going to let this thing play out potentially, and either Tomlin's going to prove his point, or there's going to be maybe some heck to pay and Najee will be leaving. But they could sign Najee to an extension this year. That lets you know that Tomlin's really in control. Tomlin got a contract extension himself, but it wasn't like it was this great mega contract extension. So I find it interesting that Najee Harris, who is to me is one of the 5 to 10 worst running backs in the NFL, is at the crossroads of the Steelers' future. And man, I would not want to be having my job security riding on Najee Harris. To go along with that, Najee wasn't at OTAs. The other guys were. And there's rumblings, whispers that players on the team or beat writers on the sidelines observing are watching OTAs, and there's a lot of people in the Jaylen Warren is the best running back we have camp, and there's getting to be whispers of, should this be a Jaylen Warren, Cordell Patterson backfield? And did they bring Patterson in maybe for that reason, that if there was trouble with Najee, they might trade him before the season starts if there's going to be a lot of spat or trouble? Where Tomlin isn't on that right now because he loves Najee, but Tomlin turns on players fast, like he did with Deontay, like he did with Kenny Pickett. Now Najee's expressing he's not kissing the Tomlin ring, so if Najee is traded, then either management is pulling stronger strings or Tomlin has got mad at Najee. But that's seen as another part of the tug of war, is might they trade Najee just so Tomlin won't bring the team down? If he doesn't have them to use them, he won't be able to bring the offense down with him. But Tomlin wants Najee to be Arthur Smith's new Derrick Henry, so there's a lot of little soap opera starting to surround Najee, who's also mouthing off about not wanting to be there for the future, and he's pissed that he didn't get the 5th-year option. But he's going to be even more pissed if he doesn't get a big old contract extension like a lot of the good players do at this stage of his contract. So that's my news out of Pittsburgh.
So to summarize, RC, do you think that Jaylen Warren right now could be undervalued in redraft or any fantasy format? Should people be targeting him?
It's so hard to say. I want to say yes. I love Jaylen Warren. I want to say yes, but you've got he's in that tug of war battle, or he's got some friendly fire that can hit him that they haven't committed. I'm just putting myself in place of Jaylen Warren. He's had to put up with 3 years. I guess we're into Najee Harris now. Najee Warren came in at the same time. 3 years of being the better running back, and everybody knows it. After about the first half of the first season, everybody knew Jaylen Warren was as good, then better, and Tomlin won't commit to him. He almost did. He kind of does, and then he pulls it away and gives it back to Najee. So I think Jaylen Warren would love to be with if Najee were to go, however Najee would go, Jalen Warren could be an RB1. But as long as Tomlin's in love with Najee, as long as Arthur Smith sees Najee as his Derrick Henry, and as long as Najee is there and not traded, then this is going to be Najee's game, and he's going to get all the touches. So Jalen Warren is just going to be a side piece, and Cordell Patterson will get stiffed again out of touches. So I want to say yes on Jalen Warren, but he's in a bad spot in the tug of war right now.
Yeah, I mean, both Tomlin and Arthur Smith, if you piss them off enough, they can quickly turn on players. Like, we've seen Smith do that in Atlanta. We've definitely seen Tomlin do that. So, to me, it feels like Warren is guaranteed at least to be, on the receiving end, to sort of like have that 70-30 split with Najee, just assuming everything's normal. But with the upside that if shit really hits the fan with Najee, that he could be the lead back. But we'll see where that takes us. RC, you also wanted to talk about the quarterbacks here, and I think I saw a note coming out of Pittsburgh today that Justin Fields was struggling picking up some of the playbook coming out of Pittsburgh. One thing that I want to call out before you dive in and give your analysis on Wilson and Fields, Arthur Smith, the OC there, had an opportunity to take Fields in Atlanta, but deferred on him. And I think our guy Jeff, that we've done podcasts with, an Atlanta insider, went as far as to say that Arthur Smith isn't really a big fan of his because he isn't really that like intelligent like pocket passer that Smith would prefer in his offense. He's not a game manager. RC, what are you hearing?
I can confirm all of that from my sources because I've been interested. There's a chunk of the fantasy world that is of the belief. You could call them the I just think this term is played out, but the Justin Field truthers are they still like and love Fields, and they don't like Russell Wilson anymore. He's old news, washed up to them. So if you put those two things together, it's only a matter of time that Justin Fields is going to be the starter. So they're drafting him fairly highly for his Justin Fields for his status in Pittsburgh right now, because they're taking a shot. Fantasy owners are taking the shot that Fields can win the job and be the number one quarterback, or that Wilson will face plant 3 weeks in, 2 weeks in, whatever. Fields will be the starting quarterback. I'm here to say, as of right now, that competition isn't even close. This is Russell Wilson's team. Everything is built around Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson is an Arthur Smith type of quarterback. There is only a Russell Wilson injury will bring on Justin Fields, and then it will probably be a mess when that happens. But just for all the people that are hedging on what seems like a cheap Justin Fields as a backup quarterback to be a starter, and he'll produce for fantasy, whether they go 0-17 under him or not, he'll produce numbers for fantasy. So I get the shot people are taking, but if I had Justin Fields in like a dynasty, I would be looking to trade him to someone who's buying into this Fields magic and trade him hot, because there doesn't seem to be any signs that there is a real quarterback competition going on here.
The only way that I can see Fields getting meaningful playing time is if Russell Wilson goes down. But in Pittsburgh, they're not only going to have a run-heavy offense, but also their offensive line is pretty damn good. I mean, they improved it a lot this offseason. They obviously burned a high draft pick last year to get Broderick Jones. I don't know if you're too high on him or not, but they're clearly trying to invest in the front. So I don't expect, I don't know, Wilson, I could see him handling it through the rest of the year. So I'm aligned with you, RC, and it sounds like Ross in the chat is also confirming everything we're saying as well. One interesting thing that Ross noted is that Arthur Smith didn't want him to come to Pittsburgh at all, which lines up with, him at the time when Smith passed up on Fields in the draft. Atlanta needed a quarterback bad, so I mean that just goes to show you, even when they were desperate for a QB, they passed up on him.
And I can't confirm or deny the Arthur Smith side of that for Fields coming to Pittsburgh. That was, and I would assume, it would not surprise me, that's not Arthur Smith's type of quarterback. I could see that being Justin Fields type or Mike Tomlin's type of reach, that he'd have that in his back pocket as somebody to groom or some emergency hatch in case Russell Wilson is terrible. But I think the offense would devolve even further into chaos if Fields gets in, because teams, they can have as good an offensive line as they want, but if teams are going to play Pittsburgh to run and dare them to throw, and for as bad as the Steelers have looked throwing the ball since Roethlisberger's last year or two, it's going to be tough to run no matter how good their O-line is.
Let's go out west, RC, to the Rams. You wanted to address their running back situation. Obviously, Kyren Williams kind of came out of nowhere last year and took the fantasy world and the league by storm. Every time that the Rams kind of featured him, and he had 20 plus carries. I think the Rams only lost one game in that stretch, and that one was against the Ravens. So clearly, he was an integral part of their offense last year. But then the Rams went on to draft Blake Corum, who was one of the top running backs coming out of this year's class. So is there a competition going on, or is this Kyren Williams' backfield to lose?
I'm watching that one and trying to get all the information I can, because that is quite the issue with Kyren Williams finishing number 2 in points per game last year among fantasy running backs and still having a pretty good ADP as the assumed starter. He's still, I think, rocking an RB1 ADP. And then, obviously, if Corum is going to come in there and split with them, it's going to be hard for Kyren to repeat or try to be an RB1 or repeat his season. My only note is to add in what I've seen kind of thrown around media and beat writer notes and all of that, but I can confirm that, according to somebody I talked to, did they use Corum in passing game scenarios a ton in OTAs, really, and then taking a lot of extra time with them and going through how to run the route, how to break off the route, where to be, foot placement and all that. There was a lot of investment, and they said that there would be when Kyren went down, that they wanted Corum to be ready in all phases. People think of him as the guy that ran for a lot of touchdowns at Michigan, so they think of him as more the runner. He's bigger than Kyren Williams. But really, really what they got him equally for or more is how good he is in the passing game. And he's exceeding expectations with what he's shown in the passing game so far. Granted, it's OTAs, but the Corum train, especially in the passing game, that train is on the move for sure. And if he's going to be the better, if he's going to be a good protector blocker, he's bigger than Kyren Williams is. And he's going to be a better kind of slot wide receiverish ability at the backfield as a pass catcher. That cannot be good for Kyren Williams to hold up his RB1 ADP.
So RC, Kyren Williams also, it felt like he got nicked up a little bit last year too, right? So he's a little, would you say he's on the injury prone side, but also does he, in your opinion, does he fit in with this Rams offense? Do you think his skill set matches what McVay's trying to run?
I think it's what the Patriots used to be able to do and that's take any running back that they saw fit and put him back behind, um, put him in the backfield, and they'd have success. And they could just keep rotating him in, out, and in. Uh, I think Kyron Williams was just fortunate to be the guy there when they needed it. That there was he was not the intended plan. Cam Akers, week one, Cam Akers, they spent the whole. I mean, we rewind back to this time last year. They spent the entire time getting Cam Akers ready to be the RB1, and Kyron Williams was going to be the other guy that took some touches and maybe did some third down work and all that. But this was Cam Akers' backfield. And then 1 week in, it all fell apart, and him and McVay were, unhappy with words said, Akers' play, and all of that. And several weeks later, Akers was gone from the team. But that started out with a whole summer preparing for Cam Akers. So Kyron just kind of came out of nowhere with no other real threat behind him, no real talent behind him. So he got a lucky situation. He did way better than I ever would have thought he could. But in watching him, he's not doing anything special. The Rams get their passing game respected. They spread everybody out, and then they have a great offensive line, and he would run for a lot of short touchdowns. He was okay for the first half of the season. Then he got a nice run later in the season, had a string of 100-yard games. But when I watch him, I'm not blown away. I'm not seeing anything that just blows me away with him. And obviously the Rams are not saying, oh, good, great, we found our guy. You don't go spend a third-round pick on a running back in this era if you think that Kyron Williams is your guy. And if you were just wanting to backstop Kyron Williams, you would have waited to the fourth or the fifth round and taken somebody. And they like Ronnie Rivers pretty well. And when Ronnie Rivers played, when Kyron was being spelled, I thought Ronnie Rivers looked just as good as Kyron Williams did. So I think it's whoever the Rams decide to give the ball to, whether it's Darrell Henderson or Royce Freeman or Kyron Williams or Ronnie Rivers, it's going to work because that offense is so good. And now it could be Blake Corum, but it's probably going to be Kyron Corum split, maybe more split than anybody would have thought going into the season.
I wanted to also bring up the rookie wide receivers, RC. It feels like this year's class, there's just a lot of rookies that have a lot of upside going into the season, especially when you compare it against the draft class last year. So you have like Marvin Harrison Jr., who I know you're not the biggest fan of, the consensus. He's he's a top like fantasy football asset. He's the first rookie getting taken off a lot of boards. We can get to that, but then you also have Malik Neighbors, who's really talented, but obviously the QB situation there isn't great. You have Brian Thomas Jr., who's really good, and Trevor Lawrence will probably target him a lot. Lad McConkey with Herbert, Coleman with Allen, Xavier Worthy with Mahomes. It just feels like there's a lot of pieces moving around here. Is there any one situation that really sticks out to you as a must-have in 2024?
There is, but my statement on the wide receiver group is more of just therapy for me to speak out loud, or just to kind of get some confirmation if anybody else is seeing it, because I get all kinds of news reports and beat writer reports and everything sent to me either on email or on Google suggestions, because it knows what I'm reading. So I mean, I've got so much stuff. I'm like 3 days behind on all these camp reports to sift through. But so I get all these reports from all these teams, and most of it is nonsense. Most of it is cheerleaders for their team writing for websites I've never heard of, or websites that don't have any, their main purpose is to find anything that mentions a player from their team, to pump up the draft picks like they're all the greatest. every high draft pick is the greatest. Every low draft pick is the steal of the draft. I mean, it's almost sickening to read these team-centric sites. But I get all of these OTA observations, winners from OTAs, who looked great, who this person said that about the. I just want to say, is it me, or does anybody else feeling this, or maybe you'll feel it when I say it. Every day I get something written or commented about how great Malik Neighbors is. Whether it's true or not, I get something that says, "Oh man, Malik Neighbors is out of this world." Like, you think he was good? You wait till you see it. You know, we all were told he was good. We saw him at LSU, but to watch him in OTAs is like, this is unbelievable. So I see all that type of reporting. Then Lad McConkey, it's like Justin Herbert. He's, McConkey's like a 5-year veteran. McConkey's this, McConkey's that. McConkey's going to be the number one. All this, and rightfully so. So I see all this on Neighbors and McConkey. I don't hear a peep about Marvin Harrison. There's a lot of people say Marvin Harrison's the greatest wide receiver I ever scouted, which I am mystified at that anybody could actually say that, unless he's the only wide receiver they ever scouted. But there's no enthusiasm, there's no overbearing hype coming out about what people have seen about Marvin Harrison, except for he works too hard. He's just too much. He's doing too much work. Like, that's I'm supposed to be impressed by that he's putting in all of this work. Like, what kind of work? Every team website has got their guy that's at the team facility at 3 a.m. and he leaves at 2 a.m. I think they just then drive home and then turn around and come back and open up the building. So I don't know why that's supposed to prove that somebody's really good, but that's what we get on Marvin Harrison. We don't get with McConkey and Neighbors. People have their tongues out going, "Oh my God, I mean, he's even better than I thought." When you see him live, with Marvin Harrison, it's like, that guy's at work too long. Go home. Like, nobody wants to see anymore. I think that everybody would love to see more Neighbors and McConkey working, but everybody else is like, with Marvin Harrison, like, please stop working. We've seen enough.
Oh man, RC. You know what? For fantasy football purposes, I think the guy's gonna get targeted though, right? Like, there isn't a lot of competition there. They play in a dome. Murray's probably gonna chuck him the ball. So for fantasy football purposes, I think that his stats are going to be okay, but I see Neighbors, I see Lad McConkey, and I just get so much more even Keon Coleman, like, he's going to have he's going to get a lot of target share from Josh Allen. He's pretty much like, he's their big body, like, receiver that's going to be playing for them. So I don't know, like, Marvin Harrison, for the price that people are paying in fantasy, is like, you don't want any part of that unless he slips into, like, he's a steal in, like, the later rounds, right?
Well, I mean, he'd slip into maybe the second or third round of a redraft right now. He's definitely going the 101 in every non-superflex. His value is what you can trade him for because everybody's feverishly after him. But I'm not ready to make this statement, even though I'm going to make it. I'm not ready to officially make it. I'm just floating it out there like a political campaign trial balloon. It's going to float it out there. I'm not ready to say it yet because I want to see some more information. But I believe that Michael Wilson is better than Marvin Harrison.
That is a bold statement, man.
And I would say I'm pretty sure about that. That's not the trial balloon part. I believe Michael Wilson's better than Marvin Harrison. But I'm starting to think, and it just might be my own wishful thinking, but listening to what Kyler Murray's been doing and talking about this offseason, And credit to Kyler, who was never. I've read something today where his first couple years in the league, he never showed up to the voluntary stuff, or he always preferred to go work in Texas or something like that. But the last 2 years under Gannon, he's made sure to be at these OTAs. He's like taking everything more seriously. We're starting to get the mature Kyler Murray, and what he was talking about a couple weeks ago was talking about how good Michael Wilson was and how absolutely underrated Greg Dortch was. And I was like, whoa, are me and Kyler best friends now? Like, but he's not saying there's no, when things come up about the Giants, there is no other wide receiver that exists besides Malik Neighbors. When discussions come up about the Chargers, there is no wide receiver that exists besides Lad McConkey. You talk about the Cardinals, it's like, this might be Michael Wilson's breakout year. And, that Greg Dortch is pretty crafty. And Trey McBride, man, he seems like he's got a good connection. I don't hear it's all Marvin. I mean, Marvin Harrison is – there's not even going to be room for anybody else because Marvin Harrison is going to get all the – I am not feeling the vibe, even if it's a hype lie, coming out of Arizona yet for Marvin Harrison. I've seen some OTA footage, but I mean, he looks human. My whole thing on him and Caleb Williams is they're human. They're not the gods that people have made them out to be. What kind of humans and how flawed they are is up for debate, but Marvin Harrison is not a god wide receiver.
So, similar question to what I had with Pittsburgh. Is there value in Michael Wilson? Because I feel like everyone's concentrating on Marvin Harrison, and it's depressing Wilson's redraft value. And, in any fantasy football format, like, should people be trying to stash Wilson on their rosters?
I believe so, and a lot of FFMers drafted him because he was a key part of our draft value from last year, because we had him as the number one rated wide receiver in a very weak class. We had him as the number one rated wide receiver going to Arizona with the opportunity of Marquise Brown going to be a free agent, and the world could open up to Michael Wilson. And I don't think people believe that Michael Wilson is no good. They think he's injury prone because he was in college, and he did miss a couple of games in season, his rookie season. But now that Marvin Harrison exists, now we must ignore everything else because of the aura of Marvin Harrison. I don't know that that's going to be the case. I'm getting the feeling that that's not the case in Arizona, that Kyler Murray is not going to just sell out to Marvin Harrison and throw him every pass. And it may be to Michael Wilson's benefit that Marvin Harrison is going to have every number one corner go right on him. He's not a slot receiver, so he can't hide from the guys that travel, the corners that travel with the number one wide receivers. So now you got Michael Wilson, who I think is better in just about every way than Marvin Harrison. He can definitely get open in a blink better. He was a way better route runner than Marvin Harrison is. Michael Wilson is a great route runner. If Harrison's getting all of the attention, Michael Wilson's going to be a great throw on the other side with lesser coverage. So I'm starting to get a little excited for Michael Wilson.
And the thing about
especially at the ADP or the perceived value of him, which is dying because no one can exist aside from Marvin Harrison.
I mean, RC, you see how high Marvin Harrison's going. It's like, how much higher could he possibly be valued, even if he does like?
He's already a wide receiver one for redraft. He's already a wide receiver one. He's the number 8, 9. Where did we track him for the last 2 weeks?
Like, even if he hits the gate running, right? Like
number 12.
Let's just say the guy opens up with like 2 straight games of 100 yards and a touchdown in each one. Like, how much more could it like people still wouldn't trade him for like the
Oh,
top
no.
wide receivers, right? So there's really like the biggest upside in him is probably selling him before the season starts, in my opinion, because otherwise his value is either going to stay the same if he does really well, or it's going to probably go down if what your intuition is like coming true, right? If like he does start off slow, if a lot of the number one corners go on him, then his value is just gonna keep heading downward. So I don't know. It doesn't seem like a good investment to me.
And they have a tough schedule. His investment is if you can get him, take him, but then turn around and trade him. He's the number anywhere between 12 and 13 wide receiver off boards in ADP and redraft. And overall, he's going anywhere from 15 to 25, but more around the 19-20 overall range. So he's a second rounder already.
Yeah, that's wild to me. But anyways, RC, let's shift gears. Let's head to Dallas. They're obviously this year they went ahead and re-signed. They got Zeke back, right? Last year Zeke took a 1-year hiatus with the Patriots, so he's back in the running back room. Tony Pollard heads to the Titans, but now it's interesting at what's unfolding right underneath Zeke, right? Like you have Deuce Vaughn, you have Rico Dewattle or whatever. Like RC, what do you think? Like, first of all, is this Zeke's backfield? Like, is he in the lead to kind of be the RB1 here? And what are you seeing between like Vaughn and Dowdle?
I think that it's Zeke's number one for sure. He's going to be working with Dowdle out of the gates as Dowdle is the number two. And if Zeke is going fine, they're going to ride Zeke. If he struggles, then there may be more balance or more effort at Dowdle, but Dowdle's not that great. So Zeke has all of the history, all of the respect of Dak and everything. It just works. Like if Zeke went anywhere else, it wouldn't even be. Even if he went somewhere because a number one running back got hurt, and then they signed Ezekiel Elliott as a free agent, it wouldn't be as perfect as this situation returning to Dallas is right now. But I brought this up as a topic for the audience to play along with, as well as yourself. I'm going to pose a question, and anybody in the chat can answer it. And I'm going to get Andrew's answer as well. We got Ross out there. Ross may sniff this out, but we'll see. So, in OTAs, one running back for Dallas ran with the first team the majority of the time, according to my sources. And Ezekiel Elliott and Dowdle were not there. Were not practicing. So it left the number one. Somebody had to be the number one running back for their offensive workouts. Who do you think that running back was?
I mean, I would have to guess Deuce, but I feel
like people can put it in the chat.
I feel like you wouldn't pose this question if it was Deuce. I feel like that's the obvious answer, so it can't be Deuce. But I'll just go with him for process of elimination.
I'll give anybody else a chance to type in an answer. By virtue of my question, you're correct. It's not going to be Deuce. I wouldn't do that to you. I want it to be Deuce, but now I'm ticked that it's not, because this information changes a lot for me. It's going to pretty much has stomped out about the last ounce of love that I had and hope and prayers for Deuce Vaughn. But there's another running back who ran with the ones that people are starting to go, hey, wait a minute. This guy. So I give another 20 seconds for everybody to look at the depth charts, and let me see what the depth charts may work in my favor here. I don't even know what the depth charts online say. Let me look real quick. Okay. I was waiting for somebody. Somebody was going to guess Nathaniel Pete. I was waiting for that. Bonus points for you for noticing that. Ross Jacobs, if I would have been posed this question and knowing that it wasn't Deuce, I would have guessed Royce Freeman. Deuce is wrong. Pete is wrong. Royce Freeman is wrong. Now with that, does anybody want to guess that I've brought it down to that level? It is not Malik Davis. That's why I found this so interesting.
We're running out of running backs.
So because everybody's taking shots and are wrong, I'm going to just be entertained like the main character from Saw and just sit back and torture
Jesus
everybody
Christ.
till it's not Snoop Connor, who is number 5 on the depth chart at running back. Let's see if anybody's going to be clever and figure this out from the depth charts. I can't give you any more hint than that.
Is it not a running back? Is there like a receiver running with the ones or something? Okay.
I'm not going to confirm or deny your
Okay.
question.
Is it Turpin?
It is not Turpin.
Okay.
Joe Schmo is correct.
Hit it. Hunter Lepke.
He is listed as a fullback, but he was a pretty nice running back at North Dakota State, who I liked a lot, and he got into the preseason. They made him a fullback right away, and I thought he looked terrible in the preseason, like he was lost. Like I thought they were going to cut him. They did not cut him. He ended up, let me just to further this story just a little bit, let me pull up something, why this is a little interesting. So he's a fullback, 6'1", 234, fullback, ran a 4.6 with a 7.03 3 cone, so he moves pretty well. For 234 pounds, he moves pretty well. But they instantly put him at fullback, which I was surprised. I thought they'd look at him as maybe a power running back. They didn't. I thought he might get cut in the preseason. He looked so shaky, but he didn't. In season, he started to get some touches here and there, and didn't really do much with them. Did catch some passes. He's a decent pass catcher, but he's got size. He's got speed. He was looking better later in the season. He looked a lot more confident with being in the NFL. So, but according to my source, which I wasn't even looking for, like I assumed the Dallas situation is going to be Zeke, going to be Dowdle, and Deuce Vaughn at de facto number 3, with Royce Freeman trying to make his way into there. But according to my source, Freeman, Deuce, and somebody else were running with the 2s almost all of the time, while I think, if I remember correctly, his last name is pronounced Lupke. But it's been a while since I've even thought about him. So, but he ran with the 1s the majority of the time with no Zeke, no Dowdle. So
that is pretty interesting, RC. But like, do you think that there's anything fantasy football wise here, or is it just like,
how much do you love Ezekiel Elliott and Rico Dowdle?
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, Elliott, I don't know. I could see Elliott coming out of that.
I'm all for Ezekiel Elliott.
Yeah.
We talked about him before he even got signed by the Cowboys. And as a great pickup to hedge that this was going to happen. I think it's going to be Ezekiel Elliott. I have a ton of cheap Ezekiel Elliott in Dynasty, so I need it to be Ezekiel Elliott. I'm just saying that there are worse. Our boy from Alcorn State, Jarvion Howard, goes to Green Bay, and he immediately looks up and he's got Jacobs, Lloyd, Dylan, and my other guy, Emmanuel Wilson. Like, he's never going to see the light of day on that team. Luepke's got to get past Ezekiel Elliott and Rico Dowdle right now.
I mean,
so that's why it's interesting to me.
Yeah.
Whether it comes to fruition, man, I don't. I'd be blown away. But I will just say, Luepke is not without talent. And being 6'1", 234, and can run a low 4.6 with a 7.03 cone is also a talent. So
interesting. Well, we'll keep our eye on that for sure. That'll be a fun story if that plays out. But RC,
that was my zinger for the show. This last one I thought was going to be a bit of a zinger too, but Grant Cohn I saw is also speculating it. So
I want to try to guess it too, where you're trying to go. Well, let's set it up for the audience as well. So RC wanted to address some trade rumors going on with Brandon Ayuk, but obviously he wouldn't come on here and tell you, oh, he might go to Pittsburgh, because that's what everybody else is speculating. If I'm connecting the dots, RC, I think that the Commanders might be in play for him, just given the GMs from San Francisco. Jaden Daniels and Ayuk go back to Arizona State, so I think you can draw some connections there. Is that where you were going with the potential Brandon Ayuk trade rumor?
Yes. Here are the two rumors that I do not fully trust, but I'm going to share for the fun of it. Supposedly, Washington's attempt to get Brandon Ayuk at some point in time, could have been months ago, their first attempt was Jahan Dotson for Brandon Ayuk as the basis of a deal. Now, we can look at that and go, well, that's ridiculous. Brandon Ayuk is 10 times better than Jahan Dotson. Remember that when you're trading for Ayuk in this equation, when you trade for him, you're going to have to sign him to a 5-year, $100 million deal. So you're not getting equal value. You're not getting the same player back. You're taking him off San Francisco's hands at a big price. So Ayuk is going at a discount to wherever he goes, if he goes somewhere. So their effort was Jahan Dotson, because Jahan Dotson's a former first-round pick, ridiculously enough. So they tried that, which I get, but San Francisco was wise to not be interested. But the trade that is possible, that I saw Grant Cohn either knows something, or he was just speculating that this would be a good trade, and I thought the same, that it's possible that a Terry McLaurin for Ayuk straight up is on the table, which is more similar players, but why Washington would do it would be McLaurin's going to be in this boat next year of wanting a new deal, and he's really not worth it. Like, they're going to get into a problem with Terry McLaurin probably next year. This is not the new regime's guy. They could come down to okay, do we run this year, run with Terry McLaurin? Let's say that both those guys are on an equalish plane. Do we run with the cheaper McLaurin, but then have this big headache next year to deal with, and maybe we don't want to give him a big extension, because if you've read my report on Terry McLaurin today, I would start to believe if the new Washington regime was watching tape of McLaurin in 2023, they probably are thinking they need to Deontay Johnson him quickly. So they might be willing to go ahead and give up McLaurin, take Brandon Ayuk as kind of an equal trade. Maybe Brandon Ayuk would be considered better, and he's certainly a better blocker for the run game. And if they're going to pay somebody anyway, it's basically between them paying Ayuk or them paying McLaurin. And Ayuk is would be one of their guys at that point, where Terry McLaurin's not one of their original guys. So then it would be on the 49ers to go. The opposite thought of that for the 49ers would be, well, we get McLaurin in, and then we can dump him next year. Either just cut him and take the hit, because his contract is like a good amount of money, but if you cut him, it's not that bad of a hit compared to what he's really. I just off the top of my head, I think he's due next year $25 million for the season, but could be cut for like $8 to $10 million. So if for San Francisco, it's a rental of a receiver for a year who's not all mouthy like Ayuk's been getting. And that for if San Francisco's looking at, they got to play Purdy, they got to, there's a lot of money to be starting to be doled out in San Francisco coming up. And if they already bringing in Pearsall as more of the future, and they don't want to pay Ayuk, they can shuffle him to Washington, let Washington pay for it, which they might be happy to get their number one wide receiver for them. San Francisco take the short-term rental in McLaurin, like what they want to do with Ayuk this year is just let him play out this year, like Cincinnati with T. Higgins, just play out this year, and we'll see from there. But we want the flexibility. We don't want to be over-invested in wide receivers into the future. So let us take your short-term Terry McLaurin. You can have the long-term answer for you guys in Ayuk, and both sides win. So I don't know that that's out there. I'm being whispered that it's out there if San Francisco wants it, but I can't confirm. There's nobody else that's confirming that, and I don't know that this rumor is true. But I get the logic of it all, for sure, for both sides. It might accomplish what both sides are trying to do going into 2025 and keeping them both whole for 2024.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty good situation if, you marry up the quarterback and the receiver from college. Like we've seen that, that helps younger QBs too. So
I'm sorry, to your point about why Washington and Jaden Daniels and all that, that would be if Jaden Daniels, who is the franchise now, the franchise quarterbacks tend to be able to get the wide receivers they want to work with. So if Jaden Daniels and Ayuk are tight, far be it from maybe Washington to go and, not get the wide receiver that they want, especially if they're looking at Terry McLaurin as, we kind of need to get out of this before the bottom falls out of this thing.
If this trade goes down, RC, and obviously it really depends on whether or not Commanders send anything back, or just in general. Let's just say that Ayuk goes anywhere else. Does a receiver come into the room as part of the transaction? Like, what happens to Deebo Samuel's stock and his long-term prospects in San Francisco? Like, do you think San Francisco tries to keep him and make him happy with a contract? And likewise, like, do you think that for like FF purposes, if Ayuk's out of the equation, then it's it's going to be Deebo's show, right? From the wide receivers?
I think they're caught potentially in between two thoughts. I think they would keep Ayuk if he would agree to the market's been set by Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown. So they're looking at, there's somebody else, but I can't, maybe it's AJ Brown. The market's being set, and Ayuk is not as good as those guys. but Ayuk wants that kind of. He thinks he is.
He wants $30 million a year.
Yeah, he wants that. The 49ers are more down in the low mid 20s. So I think if they could get Ayuk at a reasonable value, they might do it and then say, well, then Debo's going to be our one more year and we're going to have to move on because we can't afford anybody else. But if Ayuk's the one that ends up going, then Debo's left as maybe the guy that they're going to have to pony up for the future if he clocks in, if he logs a healthy season upcoming, because Debo's more their heart and soul of the team. So in their heart of hearts, I think they'd rather have Debo, but for age and injury factors and all of that, and what's going to happen in 2025, who would you rather have at what price? Because then Debo's going to want all that money next year. I think his deal starts to come up to where he's like, okay, yeah, I got a couple years left on this deal, but I'm running out of guaranteed money. I want a new deal like A.J. Brown got and like, these other guys are getting. So they're going to have to go through this with Debo. So the question is, do you go through all of this with Ayuk going forward, or do you go through this with the older Debo in a year and going forward? And then are you going to regret the money that you spent on either of them? So San Francisco's at a crossroads. I think Washington would like to get Ayuk, but it's really in the 49ers' camp or field to try to decide what they want to do. I don't know what they're holding out for, if they're hoping that Ayuk will agree to a normal contract for him that's a tier down from those top guys.
Doesn't seem like that's going to be the case. It looks like he wants to have that kind of security and money. So we'll see what happens. RC, that brings us to the end of our topics. Should we jump into the chat, or was there anything else you wanted to discuss before doing so?
Let's take it from the top.
Okay.
Who do we need to hit first?
So,
comment or question-wise?
We can start with Keep Matriculating's question, where he's seeking a fourth tight end in Dynasty. He has, I guess it's between Jelani, Wiley, Parkinson. I guess he has Jelani, Wiley, and Parkinson. He's considering Allen Davis, Darnell Washington, Kroll, Cager, and not sure where he was going with that last tight end there. But what are your...
He's spelling it so it stays out of trouble for the website or for the channel.
Oh, okay.
Zach Kuntz.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on those pool of tight ends? Is there anybody else you would target as the fourth tight end?
I'll go through these guys real quick on where I'm at on them and status reports from OTAs, etc. Davis Allen is doing well, but he's more of risk to Parkinson. I guess you can consider him a handcuff to Parkinson. They may end up splitting each other. Davis Allen is a threat, and I wrote this a couple days ago. He's a threat to the shred of hope that Parkinson would be a sneaky tight end 2 with the Rams with maybe a little bit of upside. Davis Allen is trying to disrupt that and potentially could. So you could look at him. His value in your world would be if Parkinson flops, then you got Davis Allen, or Parkinson gets hurt, then you got Davis Allen, I should say. I don't think Parkinson will flop. But the two of them may not equal. They could hog up 2 spots on your roster and just split each other to nothing, and then you've got 2 wasted spots on 2 tight ends. Darnell Washington, I'll have a note out on him tomorrow in the RC notes. It is not going well for Darnell Washington in the passing game with Pittsburgh. So any thoughts of Arthur Smith then makes the tight ends about Darnell Washington has not helped himself at all to be seen as a receiving threat. Pat Fryermuth is way out in front and doing. Everybody's beaming about Fryermuth, and everybody is down on Darnell Washington. Zach Kuntz, I've heard, has not done well in OTAs, but I also know that Aaron Rodgers thinks a lot about him, so I'm holding out hope, but I would have thought that Kuntz should have started to have some. I wanted to see somebody or have somebody tell me, hey man, Zach Kuntz is really starting to come on. I'm getting none of that. I've only seen some slight negative reports on Kuntz, so not excited there. Cager, the second Daniel Bellinger exists again. If his injury is just minor and he's going to be, full ride, ready to go for training camp, then Cager's buried, and that's a bad passing game, so it's going to be hard to get anything out of Cager. Krull all of a sudden has a chance to be Denver's best tight end. So at this stage, if you're seeking someone that if those are your 4 tight ends, and this isn't going to be Wiley's year, although, man, are things going great for him. You want to talk about guys that are getting camp love and from beat writers and players and everything else. I mean, Travis Kelce the other day was just like, Wiley's a better tight end as a rookie than I was as a rookie. Wiley is one of the probably I hear more things about Jared Wiley than I do Marvin Harrison. But I don't. This can't be Wiley's year unless Kelce gets hurt. Parkinson has hope, but Davis Allen's going to try to take it away. If Jelani is healthy, Jelani's going to be the man. But I get that that's a shaky tight end situation, and you need tight end. Like if Jelani gets hurt again, you're going to be like, oh no. So of the names that you've said, Krull is the one I think that's closest to being the star. Like if I had to bet between Washington, Krull, Cager, and Kuntz, or Davis Allen, who was going to score the most fantasy points this year, I would say that it would be Krull. Not going to swear my life to it, but that's who I would pick if it was a contest to have to get right. If you didn't care, if you're like, no, I just want somebody for the long term. I want to take a shot on somebody who may be a superstar. That might be Zach Kuntz. Cager could be in that discussion. Krull could be. Like Krull won't be a superstar, but he by virtue of maybe becoming a starter before any of those other guys do. Krull's in that discussion. I just think Darnell Washington is out, and I don't think Davis Allen will be the full starting tight end with no challengers with the Rams because Parkinson, Higbee will come back at some point. So all roads kind of starting to point back to Krull right now. Oddly.
RC, I agree with you that Wiley probably won't see any crazy playing time unless Kelce gets injured, but Kelce is...
I think he's going to see it. I think he's going to see playing time, but you're not... I don't think there's going to be any weeks where we're like, okay, I'm rolling with Wiley this week while Kelce is still playing.
Yeah, I guess I should say, let me rephrase that. I don't think that he's going to be like a significant fantasy asset unless there's an injury, right? But with that being said, I think Kelce going into, he's definitely looked like he slowed down in the regular season, obviously picked it back up in the playoffs. Like, there's a chance that he could get injured and Wiley could, catch fire, especially, playing with Mahomes. So I love it for, dynasty purposes, but you're right. There's, on that list of those current 3 tight ends, if Jelani goes down with an injury, then all of a sudden, it's a very shaky group.
Yeah, it's all money is on Parkinson at that point, which has hope. But I would be thinking I need a number 2 for this year because if you're holding those 3 guys as your 4 tight ends in a dynasty, it must be a pretty deep dynasty league, and you just need a secure tight end. So Krull is the closest right now to the gold.
Okay. RC, next question also comes from Keep Matriculating, and it involves 2 Tennessee Volunteer quarterbacks, so I'm excited to get to this one. Ross gave his thoughts on it too. So if you scroll down a little bit, Keep Matriculating has a second question there. And
okay, it's way down there. Let's go back to let me just hit the comments in between that, so no comment gets unaddressed. Unless they're Ross ramblings, I can skip some of those.
I enjoy Ross ramblings.
I know they're good, but they're out there to support or conflict what I'm saying. So I'll address the ones that need to be addressed. But Keep Matriculating, repeating the thanks from last week regarding the daily RC notes. I'm going to slow Dynasty Draft, and the notes are truly valuable. Love the insights into positional battles and potential hidden gems. And once again, I thank you for that. That's been a new staple and a good way to communicate every day with some football news. And I try to comb the universe for things off the beaten path. So, but we did start our movie and TV series review segments added to RC's notes because news is going to start to thin out for the next couple weeks. So you got that as a bonus. Ross's stuff is all pertinent on that. So, okay, I'm caught up.
Okay. So as a lottery ticket for a 5th QB in a Superflex Dynasty League, he already has Herbert, Jaden Daniels, Will Levis, and Bo Nix. How would you rank the following quarterbacks? Jordan Travis, Joel Milton, and Hendon Hooker. For the audience, the first 2 are rookie quarterbacks coming in. Travis was part of the FSU team that got kind of screwed out of the playoffs, partly because he...
Not kinda.
Oh, I mean, they would have gotten killed if they made the playoffs, but I get what the committee did there, right or wrong. But anyways, part of the reason there is Travis having a really bad season-ending injury, right? Then you have Joel Milton, the University of Tennessee's quarterback this season, who has a rocket arm, and Hendon Hooker, who was drafted last year by the Lions, who also had a really bad injury to end the season. I think he tore up his knee. He was kind of redshirted his first NFL season, but I don't know, I didn't really see too much. RC, I guess let me defer this to you. Out of those 3, who would you get as your lottery ticket?
Jordan Travis stinks. Joe Milton has great tools that need developing, if they ever will develop, and it's questionable, highly questionable that they ever will. Hendon Hooker isn't great, but Ross is correct that he's the one. If there's an injury with the Jets, it ain't going to be Jordan Travis. If there's an injury for the Patriots, it ain't going to be Joe Milton. If there's an injury for Jared Goff, Hendon Hooker inherits the world, inherits one of the best offenses in the league, with one of the best, if not the best, offensive line. So Hooker is way the decision here. And even for the future, I don't think Jordan Travis is ever going to be anything. Joe Milton will take way too long before we even have some hope. Hooker could, again, one injury away, and he's going to have to play. And then if he plays well, you know everybody's going to try to replace Goff. So he's got that going for him. So definitely Hooker.
Okay. All right. Do you want to address the comments in between the next question?
Yeah, I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything. So we addressed the Ross one. Mm-hmm. So are we on to the Tom Finn one?
Yep. So
okay.
The Michael Wilson owner has him on the block. I'm the only FFM guy in the league, so might try offering a late 2025 third.
I would ask in that equation, just out of curiosity, who is of all the wide receivers that you have on your roster, who would you consider your last guy? Who's the weakest link wide receiver that you have? That will let me know how deep your league is and give some value or some yay or nay on whether that's a good idea, because I just don't know how deep that league runs, where Michael Wilson might be close to getting cut depending on the size of the league. So why offer anything good for it? So I'll get a better idea without going into great detail by just knowing, Tom Finn, who you say is your low man on the totem pole wide receiver. And then we'll pick that up if you answer it down below.
Okay. And then the next few comments, RC, we're back to the game we were playing with the Dallas running back. So I'm going to skip over those comments.
There's a lot of Peyton Hillis talk.
Yeah. Haven't heard that name in a while.
The C tried to wipe him out, but he fought back and won.
So, RC, I think Joe Schmo had a good question if I interpreted it right. So they would pay, if Ayuk got traded to the Commanders, they give the money to the receiver that they want, right? Instead of potentially like McLaurin and Dotson down the line. But do you see Terry McLaurin as being a 1-year rental, and that if McLaurin's the one traded, do you see McLaurin as the
well, he'd be the potential 1-year rental, in that they can maneuver out of his upcoming deal, and he's going to want a ton of money this time next year. It will be his time to start complaining about money, and his contract is such that they'll be able to move out of it. There may be something about who pays what on the contracts and the deal as well. So, but if they give Ayuk all the money, then they certainly can't. There's no flexibility once they pay Ayuk. Then it transfers over to, what are they going to do with Debo? Is he going to be the sacrificial lamb? Because Purdy deserves more money than Trevor Lawrence, and one more big year from Purdy, and he's going to get it. So you're paying they just paid McCaffrey. They're going to have just paid Ayuk potentially. They've got a lot of cost on defense. With Bosa's got a huge contract. Then are you going to try to pay both Ayuk and Debo $20+ million a year, with Purdy making 35 or 40 or 50 or whatever the going rate is going to be? So one of those wide receivers can't coexist a year from now.
Okay, and the next comments, Ross is talking about his Arkansas, the Peyton Hillis jersey used to have that he lost, which is pretty cool. If he still had the Arkansas jersey. And then going down, he's discussing some of the stuff around that trade. Sorry, I lost my screen. Give me a second.
Oh, I'm picking it up with then Tom Finn has a question.
Yeah, there you go.
You got it?
Yep. Hi, RC and Andrew.
Okay.
What becomes of Emmanuel Wilson and Chris Brooks with Lloyd and Wright being drafted? Undrafted free agents have such tight windows of opportunity. Have those windows closed for Wilson and Brooks?
It's more closed for Brooks in Miami because he's coming off an ACL tear. They have 3 speedsters, and Brooks is not a speedster. Everything is pointing towards Brooks is going back to the practice squad, and then he has all those guys above him. In another year, Mostert has to age out at some point. Achan Wright and maybe Brooks starts to get into the rotation in a Mostert-ish lower volume Mostert role. But the the candle is starting to flicker and get dim on Brooks. Emmanuel Wilson is better than Chris Brooks as a talent, but he's just as buried. But in another year, they can get out of that job. Next year, it's possible. Like if Emmanuel Wilson does really well, Lloyd will be pushed to the starting job potentially. Josh Jacobs' contract is kind of has an out, I believe, that they can get out after this year. And then AJ Dillon's, I think, is just on a 1 year. He's just was too cheap to pass up, so they brought it back. So a year from now, it could be Lloyd and Wilson. A year from now on Miami, it's going to be A-Chain and Wright, and then who knows if the ghost of Raheem Mostert keeps staying alive. Brooks is still buried, so Wilson has more of a path, but they are both they both got a lot of rubble that they're buried under right now.
RC, this next question.
And let me just say something
ahead.
real quick. Reading what Ross said, and I'm only saying that for if Wilson, whichever of these guys can get to the number 2 spot on their depth chart, is then in line to inherit the world if the number 1 gets hurt or whatever. So Wilson has a bit of a path to that. It's a stretch. I don't see Brooks really doesn't have a path. It's pretty slam shut on Brooks, but it's still a little open for Wilson.
Okay. Now, I think when we were talking about Wiley, Ross asked the question, isn't Wiley running with the 1s and 2 tight end sets? RC, I think maybe Noah Gray last year was running in the 2 tight end sets. Has Wiley already jumped him on the depth chart?
Noah Gray helps all of us who've drafted Wiley or are going to want to draft Wiley in a rookie draft to come, because Noah Gray was all the rage, a couple of years ago, and he was the next Kelsey and blah blah. None of that is true. So a lot of the Wiley stuff is just kind of being like, yeah, this is great camp talk. Everybody loves everybody. This is moving on. We heard all this about Noah Gray. But it is different for Wiley. I did see that he was running with the 1s. I don't know what the context of it was, or how much or whatever, but all I know is that Andy Reid is coming out talking about how pleased and stunned he is by Wiley. Travis Kelce is talking about it. Patrick Mahomes has noted it. Beat writers have noted. So I've never the heat from Wiley is way above anything Noah Gray ever had.
Great to hear, and I don't know how much of an asset he'd be in redraft right off the bat, but definitely for me, like that, Wiley's a great dynasty asset to own.
If you have Kelce in dynasty, you have to have Wiley. He has to be one of your picks for the price of what it costs, and obviously the price is going to keep slowly rising up with all these fantastical reports coming out about him, but he's still a value, but he's even more of a value, more of a need to the Kelce owners. So
okay, next one, Tom Finnegan, 2018, 12-team IDP, 50 roster spots. Dang. My wide receivers are Kupp, Godwin, Puka, Tank, Dell, Deebo Samuel, Darnell Mooney, Malachi Corley, Jermaine Burton, and I'm assuming Luke McCaffrey. Wilson would be kind of a luxury move. I'm assuming that means Michael Wilson, but I can start up to 4 wide receivers.
I can understand the investment to take a shot on Wilson with just giving up a 3rd round pick. So when the rookie drafts last year, Wilson would have been a 3rd round pick roughly in 2023. You would likely got scooped on him or didn't have a pick in the 3rd to do it with. So his value last year was a third. He didn't have a ton of heat on him last year. He doesn't have a ton of heat on him this year, so I could see doing it for a third if he wanted, as a luxury move, as a dart throw. But it is going to be awful hard for Wilson to sustainably be good to great when Harrison's going to be all the rage.
Would you rather him, RC, trade that 2025 third or try to offer up Burton for Wilson straight up?
Is that a option? I would trade.
I don't know if it's an option. I'm
Wilson.
Just thinking out loud.
Yeah. I would trade Burton for Wilson. I can see that.
Yeah. I don't know if the guy will go for it, but, Joe Burrow's receiver might have some value there.
Yeah, the Jermaine Burton scouting report will be out tomorrow. And I went off the... it's going to be the writings of a madman.
Oh, jeez. All right,
can't
wait to
describe what I saw. I don't know why I thought of the what's the word for it? I ain't good with English. Can't think of the parallel that I gave to Burton's situation, but whatever I was reaching for, it is quite the reach. Hopefully it lands to try to describe it. I'm not saying that good or bad. I'm not trying to give away anything. Just it's kind of a bizarre start that we'll see if it makes it through the cutting room floor or not when I go to post it tomorrow.
Looking forward to that. RC, that's the end of our questions. I know you talked about the Burton report getting released soon, but anything else you wanted to share with the audience before we sign off?
Burton report tomorrow. What's tomorrow? Wednesday. Burton report tomorrow. Updated draft guide reports on undervalued, overvalued, and deep sleeper reports, more players added, everything re-ranked and run for the latest information. That's Wednesday. Thursday will be top 300 Dynasty Rookie Draft rankings update day with more commentaries. And then Friday will be a update to the draft guide, more player commentaries added. Any updates on things that I've learned in the last week, and anything and everything else that's hitting my way. RC Dotes will keep going. And I think my next rewind this upcoming weekend, I'll do the studies for the rewind player that I'm going to write about for the week and publish. I think it is going to be Jordan Love. I'm going to go back through his 2023 season and try to figure out. I'm on the fence of, was this real? Was this a flash? Was this luck? What is this? I see moments where I'm like, damn, he looks good. And then I see moments where I'm like, damn, he almost got replaced mid-season. It was going so poorly. Like, what is up with this guy? Did he get it, or did he just get on a little hot streak?
Yeah, he had a crazy stretch. I remember that Thanksgiving game is sort of like where he was kind of like reborn, right? Like where they really pushed the... I forgot if they won that game, right? Against the Lions?
I believe so.
Yeah.
I think one of their games they crushed the Lions, if I remember correctly. But halfway through the season, roughly, I was beating my chest and doing the war dance of how right I was that Jordan Love wasn't going to make it. There was word that maybe they should start giving Sean Clifford a look. Like, it was bad. Green Bay start out with record wise?
They were.
Were
You're
they
right,
like
RC.
2-6 or 2-5 to
They
start?
they went on a crazy run towards the end, but in that stretch towards the end
They
of the
were two and
season,
five and 3-6,
yeah,
and things weren't going well for Love. And then all of a sudden it turned. They beat. I'm just going through this again. Certainly going to be going through it for the study. They beat Herbertless Chargers. Then they beat the Lions on Thanksgiving. Then they beat the Chiefs, but the Chiefs weren't that great, but that was still something.
yeah,
But then they turn around and lose to the Giants. He doesn't look as good as I think Danny DeVito quarterbacked that game,
yep,
and they lost it. I remember betting. I think we all bet on the Giants coming with Green Bay, coming off of
yep,
that Kansas City game's all coming flashing back to me now.
yep.
So we won that. Then they turn around and they get walloped by Tampa Bay. Then he looked terrible against Carolina. I got outplayed by Bryce Young, week
Yeah,
16. I'm thinking at that point, yeah, Love has some touchdown passes and he's looking better than I thought he was, but he's nothing. They're not making the playoffs. They really should have lost that Carolina game. And credit to him, he got him back into it and won it late. But there was so many chances that he was going to get beat by Bryce Young. So at that point, I'm thinking it's over. Love isn't that good. Then he has a nice game against Minnesota, who was falling apart, and that might have even been a game that they started Jaron Hall in for some reason. But whether it was Jaron Hall or Mullins, that's a bad Minnesota team, and he beat them. Then they needed that Chicago game, week 18, and they kind of muddled through it. Now, Chicago was playing a lot better then. Green Bay controlled it. Love looked good, but he kind of muddled through. So at that point, I'm like, I can't believe Green Bay made it to the playoffs. I can't believe Jordan Love had a pretty good season when you look back at it. Like, I saw more negatives than positives, but the stats say it was a lot more positive. And I could see that he looked a lot better than I thought he would. So then they go into the playoffs, and he's a god against Dallas.
Yeah.
And then he's a god against San Francisco for about 2.5 quarters. Then in the fourth quarter, he looked like the Jordan Love that I remembered. He gave that game away. That Green Bay should have won that game against San Francisco. Jordan Love gave it away at the end, but it was also raining, and I can't say, but San Francisco has a good defense. San Francisco at that time was falling apart on defense. The defensive coordinator was going to get fired as soon as San Francisco's season was ended, wherever it ended, and it should have ended in both of their playoff games. They should have never made it through, and because of the defensive coordinator, they almost didn't make it through them. So I'm on the fence of Love. I'm a skeptic, and I want to be proven right, so I got to be careful that I'm not. And I do this with every report. I mean, sometimes I go into these reports, and I've got a feeling, and I think I'm going to go in and I'm just going to confirm that feeling. But I do a pretty good job, I think, of making myself neutral and coming back afterwards and going, man, this is how I felt going in, but holy crap, this is what I saw coming out, and I need to change my thinking. Or if it's the way that I thought, then I'll beat my chest and dance around and celebrate. But with Love, I just don't know. And I may come out of the study going, I still don't know. At Utah State, Jordan Love is second to last year. What put him on the map? He had this incredible. You had like 30 plus touchdowns and a handful of interceptions, and it's like, wow, Jordan Love's the next great quarterback. Then his last season was terrible. Then he goes to the Senior Bowl and he looks good one practice. Then he's terrible the next. Then he's up and down in the preseasons. And I remember, and Ross noted it, we saw him one preseason and we're like, this is the best quarterback I think we've ever seen. This is like Mahomes. Then the next year, and he got forced into a game that year when he was so good in the preseason, and he got forced into a regular season game, and he was terrible. And he was against the Chiefs. He was awful. I think they even won the game against the Chiefs through some weird set of circumstances. Mahomes may have been out sick or something, or maybe had that ankle twist he was dealing with. And I'm like, wow, Jordan Love is pathetic. So it's like every other stretch of time, there's a different thought process on Jordan Love. So I'm going to see if I can settle it with my study or if I'm going to come back and report. I don't know.
Yeah, that'll be interesting, RC. Well, thank you everybody for joining. We're at an hour and 30 minutes. Hopefully everyone enjoyed the contents for this week's show. We'll be back to you guys next week. Check out the website, ffmetrics.com, and thank you all for your support.